What's good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm break down what's happening with the overall market this round. You should be watching for as time progresses. What the news is saying about Tesla, what you should be watching going into this pre-market session. But before I break into all this information, before I talk about some very important levels to watch for and what these charts are suggesting, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's talk about some very important stuff. So today is Monday, March 25th. As you guys know, the market is kind of down in the pre-market so far. And with that happening, we're starting to see some very, very interesting pieces of news coming out for Tesla. Unfortunately, Tesla was downgraded by many analysts. That's part of why it's actually selling off a bit. And that's despite the fact that we had some decent looking technicals that did suggest it could have gone a bit higher. But once again, guys, the news is getting in the way. So I'm going to break down more levels about this, talk about some things coming out, and I'll break down the charts in just a couple of minutes. So as a reminder, at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes after market open, we have new home sales. This is a very minor piece of data, might not affect the market that much, but look for volatility between 10:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index coming out at 10:30 a.m., 1 hour after the market opens, and we have Cook from the Fed giving a speech simultaneously. On top of this, do not forget that at 11:30 a.m. we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions coming out, so watch for volatility at those times, 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. Now, a couple of things to know about the market. It's going to be a very short trading week as the market's going to be closed on Friday. For a Good Friday, that's very important to note. The market has been holding up decently, especially for last week, but now we're starting to show some signs of a decline. Could be a very, very temporary decline, so we'll have to see how that goes. There's been a lot of talk about the EU taking on American tech giants and a big investigation that has been going on. And this is actually a little negative for Apple, Alphabet, Meta, and many others out there. I'll talk more about this in just a minute. I'm going to skip over some politics talk. Biotech company Amgen, I may be saying that wrong. Amgen, it basically wants to be in a booming weight loss drug market. But the thing about this is, as a lot of different competitions out there, is trying on a monthly injection, unlike the weekly others that are out there. And with that happening, this is actually a new trial that they're trying to work on. So we'll see how this affects them. And then finally, there's been some talk about how Joe Biden signed a $1.2 trillion spending package, avoiding a government shutdown once again, which is going to keep the government funded until October 1st. So that's some big news. But in terms of other pieces of news, at least for the markets, Apple, Meta, Google, and many other tech companies have been targeted by European investigations, and they could be lasting up to 12 months. So, this is very, very important news that has come out, and it has to do with antitrust rules potentially being violated and more investigations about that. All right, so this is a little negative news for big tech out there. But for Tesla, we had even more bad news. So, Tesla had bullish technicals, could have pushed a little bit higher in terms of technical analysis. But unfortunately, some bad news came out, and that got in the way again. So what happened was Mizuho on Monday downgraded Tesla to neutral from its previous buy rating with a $195 price target. It wrote that it's a very constructive on the broader EV landscape. However, it expects near-term EV demand and tightening liquidity to create more challenges for the industry into the future. They also predict that 2024, the growth up to 15% compared to last year, is going to be down with it's not going to grow as much, basically only about 15% compared to 25% before. And others out there had very, very similar views. Additionally, there was also another downgrade that happened. We had other things being said by other analysts. So we can actually see it right over here. There's an analyst known as Vijay Rakesh. He downgraded Tesla as well alongside Neo and Rivian. Basically, EV sales growth are decelerating in his opinion, and much needed lower cost models are now expected in late 2025 to 2026. He was talking a lot about that and how this was going to affect them. He said the same thing as well. So there were more details about what he said, and we had more downgrades as well from Mizuho. So Rakesh had a very, very similar views. talking about how EV demand is slowing, not the best of news. And this downgrade is making all the headlines right now on Market Watch and these other places. That is part of why Tesla's kind of down right now. So what's going to likely happen to Tesla, in my opinion? Looking at the share price, we have resistance at this 170 area. We also have this gap to fill at 171. We have support at 167.8. If we do lose this, there's going to be a risk of us coming down to 165. As of right now, we're seeing some weakness on the chart, especially because we're gapping down. And we were attempting to rebound a bit, but I just want to warn you all to be very careful with Tesla, especially if the market drops a bit. We could see a little rebound. We could retest like 170, so maybe a little higher and then come back down, or we could just chop from here, then eventually drop. So I do see a risk of this kind of trading sideways between 167.8 to 170 for some time, and eventually coming back down a bit lower because once again we got this bad news, and we're seeing a little bit of weakness on the stock in terms of other technical developments. So it's kind of unfortunate, guys, but it is what it is. As far as SPY goes, I called out yesterday SPY would likely see some downside in the morning. Lo and behold, there it is. So may pop a bit, retest this 120 area. If we fail to hold above 120, expect us to come all the way down to about 518 potentially. So there's going to be a risk of a little bit more downside. And watch and see if we get a bounce right there. But one thing I did note in my previous video is that SPY could fall, right? Could see some downside, sure, but even if we do drop all the way down to 517, we could still be on an uptrend because of where this white trend line happens to be. So it's going to be a-okay. So in my opinion, watch resistance at 520, and then we have 522 above that. We could pop a little bit, then eventually make our way back down. I could be looking for a move right here to 518, and we'll have to see if things change from there. So watch for that as well. There is going to be a risk of it dropping a little bit more, but then watch and see if buyers defend us near 518. If we lose that, it could go excuse me, all the way down to this trend line right here, but we'll just have to wait and see. For the QQQ, the same thing. Like I said yesterday, I was expecting this to come to 444. It's almost exactly where we are right now. Look for a little pop and then a drop. If we lose that 444 support, we're going to be coming all the way down to 442, if not 440. So I do see a risk of this coming down lower. We have this imbalance all the way down to 442 too. And we had this previous resistance breakout around 440. So I see a risk of this dropping. Could pop a bit, then eventually start dropping lower, or it could just drop from here. So watch this and see if we get closer to 440. There is definitely a risk of that. For key resistance, you're going to be watching basically 444.6, then 446, 446.8, and 448. Could pop a little bit higher, retest like somewhere in the 444s, and eventually make our way back down. There is going to be a risk of more downside on this chart as we're looking a bit more bearish. We established a slower high here. That's kind of like how I interpreted this yesterday. So it could be sinking to the lower 440s. Just be a little bit careful. For Apple got this bad news involving the EU with more investigations. Tried to rebound, it kind of failed. So we're going to be watching support at 171. If we lose this, watch 170. So we'll have to see if it could hold right there. If we lose 170, there's a risk of it coming all the way down towards like the 168.5 area. So I could see a bit more downside on Apple. Chart's looking kind of weak right here. So I do see a risk of it testing 170 at the very least, if not dropping a little bit lower. So the chart is showing some weakness. To turn bullish, you have to break 172.5 and start pushing. I'm not seeing that right now. It does look like it favors downside. So just be very careful as we're continuing to sink. And finally, for Nvidia is kind of flat right now. It kind of rejected off this like 954 area. I think that it has some sideways price action coming. So we're going to be looking for a push back up towards, could get very close to about this 950 area, then come back down. But I'm going to be looking for a test of this trend line. So I think that it may pop a little bit, consolidate between 944 and 950, then eventually make our way back down lower towards the support into the 930s. I think there's a real risk of that and a real possibility. But that's just going to be a temporary move. So it might pop and then drop a little bit, consolidate a bit, then eventually bounce later. The overall chart on Nvidia, unlike the market, is actually like still more bullish. Nvidia is still bullish overall. All I said is that it might actually drop a little bit before it pushes higher later on. So that's what I'm seeing for the chart so far. Anyways, guys, that is it for the updates. Unfortunately, Tesla got some bad news. It got a big downgrade from Mizuho and other analysts. Not the best of news. And with that happening, that's part of why Tesla's underperforming a bit. Could pop a bit one more time, try to either fill this gap or just try to retest liquidity at this almost 170 area before it does drop a little bit lower. So look for a little pop and drop like moves of sideways consolidation, eventually a move down. Turn bullish, you want to break 172. We haven't done that yet. So I think that the most likely possibility is we see a lot of range bound price action, kind of like a pop and drop like move, and maybe a little downside if the market starts sinking, which I think it will. So look for that on Tesla. Watch your levels, do what you have to do, guys. And I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day. I appreciate everyone out there, and I'll see you guys in just about an hour and a half from now. Thank you for listening again, and peace out.